speak according to the program. So now, in addition to being the moderator, maybe you will have to introduce me so that I can, as a panelist, so I can start.
Yes. Let's see. Where are my glasses?
Just one line.
Great, thank you. We'll be pleased to hear from Sister Francisca Ngozi Uti, Executive Director for the Center for Women's Studies and Intervention from Nigeria.
Yes, thank you. I'll be speaking on the women's leadership, progress, challenges, and priorities. It is both an honor and a deep responsibility to speak with you today on a matter that cuts across every sector of society, women's leadership. It is central not only to shaping the G20 agenda for 2025, but also to advancing the priorities of the African Union in collaboration with women from religious, political, corporate, academic, and civil society communities. Our shared commitment to women's empowerment, equity, and sustainable development must move from words to action. Women make up half of the population, yet they struggle to secure 30% representation in leadership roles. Where are women in leadership, one may ask? I want to begin with a quote by Pope Francis. Many things have to change course, but it is we human beings above all who need to change. We lack an awareness of our common origin, of our mutual belonging, and of a future to be shared with everyone. This basic awareness would enable the development of new convictions, attitudes, and forms of life. A great cultural, spiritual, and educational challenge stands before us, and it will demand that we set out on the long path of renewal. Laudato Si, number 202. In politics, representation of women in African politics is growing. Some countries are nearing gender parity in ministerial roles. Liberia, Malawi, Mauritius, Ethiopia, Tanzania, and Namibia have all had female heads of state. Rwanda leads globally with over 60% female representation in its lower house of parliament. Other countries like South Africa and Senegal have adopted gender quotas. Of late 2021, about 25% of parliamentarians in Africa were women, while the share of female cabinet ministers rose to 24.35% in 2020. Affirmative actions and quotas help, but there is a need for an enabling environment for women, especially the younger generation. A major challenge women face in leadership, especially in politics, is childcare. Politics often requires evening engagements, and for many, the consideration is the issue of who takes care of the kids. In the corporate sector, women are rising in the executive ranks, though underrepresented in top positions like the chief executive officer. In Nigeria, for instance, 12 out of the 25 major banks are led by women. Still, many are funneled into roles centered on human resource or social responsibility, rather than the core strategy reflecting lingering gendered expectations. International organizations. African women have taken leadership in prominent global bodies, including the World Trade Organization and the African Union, signaling a growing global footprint. The 2025 International Women's Day theme, Accelerate Action, is a powerful call not just for women, but for us all, women and men, to actively push for gender equality. It is not just about conversations, but about making deliberate moves that create a lasting impact. We must push forward with intention, ensuring that today's efforts build a stronger, more inclusive tomorrow. Civil society and grassroots movements. Women continue to be pivotal in local leadership and problem solving, especially in addressing violence against women, environmental challenges, and humanitarian crises. Across the globe, women-led grassroots movements have been at the forefront of advocating for justice, equity, and sustainable development. These movements not only provide essential services and advocacy at the community level, but also serve as powerful engines for systemic change. From organizing shelters and support networks for survivors of gender-based violence to leading climate resilience projects in vulnerable regions, women are shaping more inclusive, responsive, and resilient societies. Academia and STEM. We at Center for Women's Studies and Intervention are contributing our quota in bridging this gap. We are proud to have enrolled and trained over 300 women and girls in STEM courses. CWSI builds pathways for women to thrive in science and innovation through mentorship networks, scholarship programs, technical training and workshops, and strategic partnerships with academic institutions and industry leaders. Progress and promise. We commend the African Union for adopting the Convention on Ending Violence Against Women and Girls in Africa. This landmark framework mandates accountability, demands action, and affirms the rights of every woman and girl to live without fear or discrimination. But true progress hinges on implementation, mobilizing civil society, policymakers, traditional leaders, and most importantly, women themselves. However, despite progress, significant challenges remain. 1. Cultural and societal norms still place many women in subordinate roles, prioritizing domesticity over leadership. Gender bias and discrimination undermine women's authority and contribution in leadership. Limited access to resources and opportunities such as education, mentorship, and networks restrict professional growth. Work-life balance and the lack of supportive workplace policies present persistent hurdles. Key enablers of progress. Legislation to enforce gender quotas can catalyze change. Education and leadership training to equip women with critical skills. Mentorship and networking to build professional confidence and access. Changing societal perceptions of leadership roles for women is essential. Organizational policies that support work-life balance foster inclusivity. G20 Agenda 25, Women's Leadership and Africa's Future. Empowering women means more than representation. It means placing their priorities at the heart of decision-making. The well-being of children, youth, and communities is intricately linked to the opportunities given to women. Protection from gender-based violence is a political and moral imperative. Leadership must be proactive, especially including women from faith communities, civil society, and grassroots movements. Women's involvement in peace building is not merely symbolic, it is strategic. Their experiences and moral leadership make peace more inclusive and sustainable. As Africa confronts intersecting crises, hunger, climate shocks, violence, displacement, terrorism, and xenophobia, women must be empowered as part of every solution. In this light, we spotlight the work of organizations like the Center for Women's Studies and Intervention, founded by the Handmaids of the Holy Child Jesus. Its initiatives, such as Women Religious as collaborators with the Catholic Women Organization to end violence and discrimination against women and girls in Nigeria, exemplify how faith-based and grassroots partnership can drive real change. The late Pope Francis played a notable role in advancing the conversation around women's leadership within the Catholic Church and the global community. While the Church continues to face calls for broader inclusion, Pope Francis took concrete steps to elevate women's roles within its structures. He appointed women to high-ranking Vatican positions previously held only by men, including the appointment of Sister Natalie Becket as the first woman to have voting rights in a synod of bishops, and Francisca as the first woman to hold a managerial position in the Vatican Secretariat of State. However, he repeatedly called for a more incisive presence of women in the church and society, and has encouraged dialogue around women's dignity, justice, and participation in leadership. These actions, though still evolving, reflect an important symbolic and practical shift toward recognizing and empowering women's leadership in faith context, aligning closely with broader movements for gender justice across the globe. In conclusion, women across Africa are demonstrating leadership in every sector, challenging norms and reshaping futures. Yet, for this progress to be sustained and scaled, intentional investment in women's leadership is essential through policy, education, resources, and inclusion. Let us not only place women on the agenda, but place them at the table shaping the agenda. Women's leadership is not optional. It is essential. So let me conclude with the intervention of His Excellency Monsignor Celestino of the Holy See in New York, Thursday, 8 March 2007, at the 61st session of the General Assembly of the United Nations on the promotion of gender equality and the empowerment of women. I quote, that women in society must be involved in decision-making is not only a right for reasons of equality, but also for the specific insights that women bring to the process. This feminine genius will prove most valuable as women increasingly play major roles in the solution of the serious challenges the world is facing. Thank you. Now, I cannot comment on what I have said, but I'll just move on to the next speaker, and I want to invite Nicole Sterling of Sterling Foundation, United States. The floor is now yours.
I can comment on what you said. That was wonderful. Thank you so much. And it actually goes really well with the topic that I've chosen as well. First of all, I want to say I am so excited to be here and so blessed to see so many people that have taken their time out of their busy lives to come and work together, to talk about issues together, and see how we can, through our faith backgrounds, hopefully build a possibility to collaborate and make a difference, and have our voices be heard, those from a faith background, so that policymakers are not just listening to academics and to their constituents, but understanding that those from a faith background are powerful in in their belief, in their motivation to make a change, because they believe in God, which motivates them to look around them and help the brothers and sisters around them. And then also, they're part of communities that can mobilize and can make a difference at the grassroots level. So I'm so grateful to everyone who has put in their time, their talents, their energies to put this together. I've seen in the background how much this takes, and I can't thank you enough. I'm really excited about the topic that I've chosen. The comments that you made, Sister Uti, really resonated with me because I feel that it's really important for women to be part of the discussion, for the issues to be not only heard, but talked about from those that are experiencing it. And that's the women. You did a beautiful job addressing it. Thank you so much. I deeply care about women's empowerment, not just in principle, but as a cause that is urgent and global. I'm the beneficiary of the battle that my grandmothers fought with courage and with grit. Because of them, I can vote, I can own property, I can start businesses, I can pursue education and career and public service. But in so many parts of the world, those basic rights are still out of reach. So there's still work to do, real, meaningful, life-changing work. One person who's done extraordinary research in this work is Dr. Valerie Hudson from Texas A&M University. She's one of the world's top researchers and experts on women, peace, and security. She was sponsored by the U.S. Department of Defense to carry out a multi-year study on women's empowerment. And then she came back and trained the department on her findings. What she discovered was profound. She found that the way women are treated is one of the best indicators of a nation's overall well-being. Her research shows that women's empowerment strongly correlates with better outcomes for food security, infant and maternal health, life expectancy, economic growth, good governance, and even peacekeeping. In her book, called The First Political Order, she explains that while female literacy, labor force participation, and representation within governance matter, they're not actually the foundation. The real first political order is in the home. That is where it all begins. So the question that we should be asking is, how much say does a woman have about when and whom she marries? What rights does she have to property and to inheritance? Can she leave a dangerous marriage and still keep her children? Is domestic violence normalized? And is rape seen as a violation of her humanity or just a property crime? If women are disempowered at the household level, it undermines the health of the state at every level. So fix the home and you fix the nation. And that can often be taken care of at the legislative level. Now, I also deeply care about what happens after the fight for rights. What comes when empowerment is achieved? I've lived that too. So my husband and I own an IT consulting firm in oil, gas, and gold mining. We bought and redesigned a business within the automotive industry, and I started a foundation that has supported over 500 projects in nearly 50 countries. But what is equally, or possibly more important to me and my family, is the choice that my husband and I made together for me to stay at home and raise my children full-time during their early years. Let me tell you, it wasn't easy. We sacrificed a lot, but that was what was important to us. I was able to be there at every school event. I helped with homework. I taught values and character, not just when convenient, but as my primary work. Because a leader in my faith once said, no success outside of the home can compensate for failure within. Yet some will still say that because I'm speaking up for motherhood and staying at home, I'm old-fashioned, that I'm out of touch with reality, or that I'm somehow limiting other women by expressing that this path was meaningful and fulfilling for me. But I'm not prescribing my choice. I'm asking that it be respected as a choice. Right now, there's so much online bullying against girls who say they want to be a traditional wife and mother. We hear things like, we're setting women back. You're too smart to just be a mom. Don't you want more for yourself? As if choosing motherhood or prioritizing family makes you less. And what I've realized is there doesn't have to be a choice, right? All the time when I was raising my children, just because I was not outside the home working, I was inside the home helping to build a business, right? I was deeply engaged in volunteerism, deeply engaged, spending a great deal of time, but involving my kids in those actions, making a difference where I could in leadership positions in my church, in my volunteer organizations. But we've reached a point in some cultures where choosing marriage is seen as a weakness. Choosing full-time career giving or caregiving is treated as regression. And choosing virtue is framed as slavery. So the question is, how do we champion women's empowerment without creating a culture that devalues motherhood? Bonnie L. Oscarson, one of the leaders of our church Young Women organization, said, we eagerly teach our children to aim high in this life. We want to make sure that our daughters know that they have the potential to achieve and to be whatever they can imagine. We hope they will love learning, that they'll be educated, talented, and maybe even become the next Marie Curie or Eliza R. Snow. Do we also teach our sons and daughters that there is no greater honor, no more elevated title, no more important role in this life than that of a mother or father? I know my comments are anecdotal, but my foundation helped sponsor this conference, so I hope that you'll indulge me. My hope is that researchers and leaders will continue to investigate how to champion the key indicators that truly move public well-being, indicators like I mentioned before. Does a woman have a say in who she marries and when? Does she have the rights to property and inheritance? Can she seek a divorce and still retain custody of her children? Is domestic violence normalized? Is rape treated as a violation of property or of personhood? Fighting for these kinds of outcomes is an effective way to advance women's empowerment without devaluing motherhood. It avoids over-prioritizing material gain or workplace status and preserves space for women who choose the path of nurturing, caregiving, and moral leadership in the home. Let me just share one quick example. In Ethiopia, where our foundation started doing some of our first work, our foundation supports a school for the blind and deaf children, led by a remarkable woman, blind herself, once a stay-at-home mom, who saw a need in her community and decided that she could be the one to meet the need. She raised her own children and now raises up a generation of disabled children who no one else would reach. She didn't have to choose between caregiving and leadership. Her motherhood made her leadership more powerful. I mention this because I know that in Africa, family and mothers are deeply respected, seen not as lesser, but as essential. And I believe we can and must find a path forward to women's empowerment that retains reverence for the divine role of motherhood, even as we push for progress. As the next step, I invite you, whether you're a policymaker, a faith leader, a scholar, a community builder, to work with us in identifying and advancing the kinds of empowerment that strengthen families, protect dignity, and create long-term peace. Let's invest in outcomes that matter most. Let's fight for the outcome, not just the fight. Thank you.
Nicole, I want to thank you very, very much for the issues you raised. You know, I am a religious, and it's very difficult at times for me when I go out and talk about our cultural values. And the fact that your first, no matter who you are or what you have become in society, as a woman, your first priority is your family, your husband, and your children. Respect is very mutual and reciprocal. If you respect your husband and let him know that you're doing this for the sake of the family, I'm sure he will appreciate it. So thank you very much. I don't want to go through all the other very important issues you raised, but I'm very happy to hear you, a woman like this, with the kind of office you hold now. I'm sure because maybe your children are grown now, you can move around. But for the younger generation to know that there is still value in motherhood, and the fact that you are a people does not make you less a mother. Thank you very much. That's a good one for us to take home. I now call on our next presenter, Samson Tasfaya, Rotary representative to the AU and the floor is yours.
Thank you, sister. Good morning, everyone. My name is Samson. I'm professor this is my voluntary position. On the other hand, I'm a senior advisor at Deliver, which is a political advocacy organization that works on today, I'm in capacity to talk more about what we do at Rotary, and especially on the importance of volunteerism and how we work to implement across the world and also outside. So, Rotary International is a service giving organization that was established in 1905, so we celebrated our 120 years anniversary birthday. So it is a global network of more than 1.4 million neighbors, friends, leaders, and problem solvers who see a world where people unite and take action to create a lasting change across the globe, in our communities, and also in ourselves. So what we do is, Rotary members believe that we have a shared responsibility to take actions on our world's most persistent issues. Our more than 5,000 clubs across the world work together through our 7 areas of focus. So our first areas of focus we work on is peace building and conflict prevention. As Rotary and as Rotarians, we approach peace not as an abstract concept, but as we hold it as both cornerstone of our mission and an area of focus, one of the main ways in which our members strengthen communities. We work with our communities, religious leaders, we work with the youth, we work with adults and girls, we work with our community in general on how we can foster and build peace building. Rotary has Rotary Peace Centers in different parts of the world in association with different universities where we work and provide education for young people to get a master's and also certificate programs to enhance their work on peace. Our second areas of focus is disease prevention and treatment. This is we work with again with our communities in our countries as we are volunteers and to improve the quality of existing services, support projects that expand access to affordable healthcare, and support continuing education and training services to undeserved communities. We work closely with our community, and we understand first, before we start any project, we do what we call needs assessment. And when we do our needs assessment, we talk to the community, we work with women and girls, because they are mostly the ones who are mostly affected with this, and we try to understand what their needs are. We don't want to come and say this is what you need, but we want to understand first what they need, and then we build our projects based on that. Our third areas of focus is water, sanitation, and hygiene. Again, if we go to the rural parts of any country, specifically in my country, in Ethiopia, I've been having experience going to the different parts of outside of the Addis, and we see the problem of water, sanitation, and hygiene. And it's usually the women who have to carry water from the water point to their home. So what we do is when we, as areas of focus, we work with schools, religion organizations, and the community to understand the need again. And we also support communities to increase access to water, sanitation services across the community. And women are usually the beneficiary of this project. If I may share one story here, we did a project here, like 175 kilometers from here, from Addis, and they used to wait up to 2 hours, to collect water from the water points. So we did a spring development, and then that 2 hours turned into like 15 minutes for them. And the kids, the girls who used to collect water from school, from the water point, don't need to wait 2 hours to collect water. It's now 15 minutes, and they won't be losing school time anymore. So they collect water in the morning or in the afternoon after they come, because water is readily available. Our fourth areas of focus is maternal and child health. We work on promoting good nutrition, especially for women and children. This is from start during pregnancy, during pregnancy, and after pregnancy with the children. And we develop or support programs that provide immunization and engage with communities to understand the need. What are the needs of the community? Our fifth areas of focus is basic education and literacy. This is where we provide professional and developments for teachers, community leaders, and we develop adult literacy programs and also promote student enrollments across the community, especially for girls and for girls. Our sixth areas of focus is community economic development. Here we work with micro-lenders to improve people's access to financial services. I know this is very important for women, for them to rely on self-reliance, as you said. This is really important. And we encourage and support sustainable sourcing, such as women saving groups. And we also work with women cooperatives to provide trainings and vocational trainings in saving and economic empowerment. Our last areas of focus, which was added very recently, is on environment. Rotary supports activities that strengthen the conservation and protection of natural resources, advance environmental sustainability, and foster harmony between people and the environment. So we say in Rotary that we work differently. Why we say that is we see things differently. Our multidisciplinary perspectives help us to see challenges in a unique way because we live in the society. We think differently. We apply leadership and expertise to social issues and find unique solutions. We act responsibly. Our passion and perseverance create lasting change. We make a difference at home and around the world. Our members can be found in your community and across the globe. We are easily identifiable because we wear our pin, so that anybody who knows about Rotary can easily identify, you are a Rotarian. And that's our passport everywhere we go. And I know I have a friend there who also has a pin. So that's how we communicate each other. And when we travel, everybody, if they say, "Oh, you are a Rotarian," and we open our homes to our fellow Rotarians and our friends around the world. I just want to say a few points on the importance of, because we were talking about the G20, Africa joining G20, and the importance of global spaces. These global spaces are very important to transform and space. And safeguard, we have to work on to transform and safeguard global spaces where international norms and standards are created, to ensure that traditionally ignored and marginalized voices are heard and protected. Because we have so many things and how do we make sure that the youth and the girls, adolescent girls, including in the discussions that we have in the G20, yes, this is possible, but how do we make sure that the youth and the girls, the women are represented at the spaces? And we want to work on building bridges between grassroots advocates and the decision makers to drive legal policy. That focuses on securing the rights of the most marginalized and vulnerable. And I want to also touch on shifting power to the young people, particularly adolescent girls, by providing funding tools and resources to influence decision making at all levels and advocate more effectively for just and equitable future. Centering the agency of women in advocacy is very important, and to highlight the growth, it's really important so that we demonstrate causing a lot of harm, especially against women on the continent. And we have to, because what we're seeing now, a lot of funds are being cut. So how do we make sure that we work on the programs and also how do we make sure that we have kind of spaces where we can discuss and put women and girls at the center. Yeah, and finally, I just want to say one more time that and give the floor to everyone, and like to the organizers and part of the G20, that how do we make sure that girls' views are on the table at the G20. This is really very important. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Samson, for your contributions. And I want to say something about, we talked about shared responsibility, which is very, very important. If we don't share our responsibilities and we all know what we should be bringing to the table, it makes it difficult for decisions and implementation. The need, I'm also happy you mentioned the issue of needs assessment before you start work, because most of the time you find out that when NGOs go into communities and they tell the people what they think they should be getting and not what they need, then you find out that the intervention that they have made is really not useful to them. So thank you very much. I don't want to repeat all that you have said, but I want to remind those of us, there was somebody here or some people from the G20 from South Africa. Please, we are begging that you make sure the women's issue is on the agenda. I will make a comment on something there later, but for now we go to our next presenter, Mrs. Francois Mwabufo from Cameroon. She's the coordinator of Family Health and Development Foundation. The floor is now yours.
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure for me to be here this morning. I am standing on all existing protocol. My name is Francoise Mwabufo, and I'm a public health midwife. My passion for maternal and child health, and presently I serve as the global trustee for URI, and I'm a coordinator for Family Health and Development Foundation. It's a grassroots organization. We really operate at the grassroots, but we are leaving no woman behind. So we carry them along in almost all the SDGs in different directions, like I'm going to present today. We call it Family Health and Development Foundation because our slogan is healthy family, healthy community, healthy nation. We believe that if we invest in the lives of families, we are doing that for the community and subsequently the nation. And so we work with women and their children. That's how we intervene in these families. And my faith aspect takes me to the compassionate care that we invest in these families in the community. We take care of the needs as it arises, and we discuss it elaborately with them before we seek how to intervene in different needs. So we try to nourish their body, healing their hearts, and empowering minds. Most of these women are out of camp refugees and they really less privileged in who at a certain point have lost hope of what life is, and many are really presenting an intergenerational aspect of violence because of their refugee aspect, where they are coming from, they can get back home, and this has been transmitted to their children, and so we work both with these women and the children to bring their minds back and to help them. I will start by saying that we have a holistic approach, and first of all, if I want to take the first aspect, which is sustainable agriculture and nutrition, in our sustainable agriculture, we take care of the climate resilient gardening, where we teach them how to use the natural fertilizer to grow vegetables, that they will have enough vegetables to to feed the children with. Most of these children are stunted and malnourished. You can see it even in their physique, their hair, that these children are malnourished. And so we teach them how to grow vegetables themselves so that they can have enough to give the children. At the same time, we are into agro processing, so we process enrich pap, where we give to these children from time to time in the community. And most of the women have been taught how to produce this manure themselves, but we look forward into having a biodigester that they can work on and have enough manure come out from it. The other aspect we work in is their psychosocial care. Emotionally, we talk with them one-on-one to heal the minds and hearts of those that have really gone through this war, and their families are still going through it, and teaching them how they can heal themselves so that their children also will be healed. And in our peace building, we have workshops on nonviolent communication and conflict resolution in order for them to have an interpersonal harmony and heal all they've gone through. And in our non-violence, we see that even their children are very violent, to the point where some of them have been, the school have had to reach out to us about the violence that these children portray, and we see that it is coming from the parents. So we work both with the children and the parents on that. In the light, we also teach the parents, especially the women, to love these children unconditionally and keep praying for their children, and invest in the lives of these children. Like Nicole said, take time, even if you are at home, to take care of these children out of these children, you don't know what they can become tomorrow. Love them and then show them give them some time and attention. We have a project on food security. Actually, most of these women, knowing that they are coming from very poor background, even feeding is a real problem. And we had to reach out to see how food can be distributed to them on a monthly basis, and so that they can take care of other needs and not really bother about food. It is really not easy, but we are trying, and God is helping us. In the aspect of education, we realized that most of these women never went to school, and the communication is quite difficult. They speak only their vernacular and are very comfortable in it. But for you to bring in the health aspect, the climate aspects, they need to read and write. And so we started our basic education program. We've done 2 cohorts, and it is really exciting to see how interested these women are in. Some of our training starts as early as 6 a.m. and you see them present. Now we have 2 classes because some have already known how to read and write and they've gone to a higher class. Others are still struggling to learn ABC. We are here seated, but there are some people that cannot even read A to Z. And it is a real problem for them. During one of our training, we were trying to do need assessment. You see some women will tell you, I want to do tailoring. But we say, how can you do tailoring when you cannot even take the measurement of someone that comes to you and write it down? So it now galvanized them, and they are really excited to really take this literacy program very seriously. And their children also, sometimes when we have program, we say, write your names on the list. Children can't write, parents can't write. So this is one of the things that pushed us into basic literacy for these women in the community. And now we see children that are excelling in their different classes in their education. And also the mothers that are really coming up, mothers that have never been to school, today they can read and they can write. And during this time, we also take care of scholarship for some children, because actually most of them could not stay in school till the end of the year. And so maybe they'll do this year, next year there will be no money. We started with 20 children, and I think this year we were able to pay for 60 children to get back to school with basic school equipment. And the aspect we are still struggling and trusting God to work on is the tailoring aspect, because it needs quite some funding. But the little capacity we have, we push on our activities. For example, some women have been trained on the empowerment, on transforming different foods. Actually, most of them have food around them. They get spoiled, and they don't know how to preserve it. And so we brought in that aspect. When you grow your vegetable, this is how you can preserve it for it to last longer, that you can use it for as long as. If you have okra on the farm, this is when you harvest it in big quantity, this is how you can preserve it so that you can use it in the day there is no okra. That's an example of a vegetable. And the maternal and child, we still have women in the community that have home delivery. Not because they want to deliver at home, because they have even no money to go to antenatal, and their option is to deliver at home. And so it is a really very big work for us with these women in the community. Some actually lose their life or they lost the child, but if you talk, they say, we have nothing to do. So we are trying to help them to see that it is very important for a qualified personnel to be there to attend to you during delivery. And some do not do antenatal at all. We try to bring folic acids and other multivitamins that they need. and also teach them which food to eat during pregnancy. If we talk about the first 1,000 days, we will see that nutrition is very, very important and key in upbringing, in the education, and in the health of these children. So we try to teach the women, what do you eat? Local food that are rich for them to eat so that they will have healthy children. I'm sorry, time is up, but probably if I'm given opportunity, I will come on other aspects that we are doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Francois. You know, it's very heartwarming for me to hear you talk on maternal health and the challenges. I'll tell you something we discovered from our center last year. You can't believe that infanticide is still practiced even in this time. 2025, that children have to die because they are considered evil children because their mothers died at childbirth. But you know, it's because of difficult delivery. So maternal health is still very, very important to educate women to know that it is not because the child is evil that the mother died, but it is because of the circumstances. It's very, very heartbreaking at this time. And then you talked about the internally displaced persons, which is something that has become very common now in some parts of Africa, where people can no longer live in their homes or in their own localities. It's quite heartbreaking. But what do we do? So these are issues that the AU will have to present and see what the global community can do to stop it. Not just giving handout, because when these people leave their homes, it's not easy for them. For you to settle somewhere else, it's not the best. It can never be like your own home and environment. So thank you very much for your contribution. We now go to our last panelist, Mr. Kevin Highland, who is the Chief Executive of Preveni Global Ireland, but is also the Chief Advisor to the Santa Marta Group, a group founded at the Vatican with Pope Francis. Mr. Kevin, the floor is yours now.
Thank you, Sister. And can I start by thanking the IF20, the African Union, URI, and the sponsors of this event, and all those who did work planning it, and of course the staff at this hotel who have looked after us so well. Without people like that, these events would be impossible. Women's leadership is crucial to make a difference in our globalized world. This is particularly evident in the fight against human trafficking, where we see women's leadership on the front line. I chair a group called Arise, which is based in the UK and the USA. It funds and delivers frontline services through congregations of religious sisters in Africa, in Europe, Southeast Asia, and South Asia. But as my fellow panelists have said, and given examples of women's leadership, it needs to be integrated into leadership within the norms of society, politics, and economics. We need to see women at senior positions in politics. We need to see them in global discussions that we've heard around peace. We need them in leadership posts within C-suites and across businesses. And we need to see them recognized for the contributions they give in keeping families together and leading families into places where only women and mothers can develop. I was one of the beneficiaries of the very models that we heard earlier. But I want to talk about human trafficking and the need for the G20 and what the African Union can do, particularly with its 55 member states. Pope Francis has called human trafficking and modern slavery an open wound on humanity and on the body of Christ. We need to heal that wound. The statistics today show that 50 million children, women and men are exploited every day across every continent, generating $236 billion annually for criminals, and it must be stopped. These figures include 22,000 children who die in hazardous work conditions every year, and over 100,000 fishers who lose their lives, whilst organisations like Stella Maris and the religious order of Scalabrinis do all they can to protect those mainly men, but also women, but also the families back at home, so that they can be protected. Because when their men go to work and the remittances don't come back, it's the family that suffer. Many people are traded for their organs, particularly in Mozambique, where I know religious sisters are working hard to challenge those norms. Women and girls are sold for sex all across the planet. Forced criminality, including scam centres and child soldiers, operate in Africa, in Southeast Asia. And it's people in countries like my own, in Ireland and the UK and the US, where additional victims are created when they are scammed out of their savings and their pensions, normally elderly people or people who are vulnerable. We see domestic servitude, where some of the most wealthy households in my part of the world, but also globally, where women are taken from Africa or Southeast Asia, and they end up as servants, as slaves in households, in diplomatic residence. In fact, in the UK, because of the prevalence of it, it does no longer attract diplomatic immunity. So those who exploit in modern slavery and human trafficking, even though they may be diplomats, can now be pursued. Forced labour happens across the world, and as I've said, often with children. And these crimes do not happen in a vacuum. Often they're linked to terrorism, child soldiers, drug dealing, illegal arms trade, and people smuggling, generating, as I've said, billions and billions of dollars. But why do these crimes occur? And what can we, as the G20, and what can the African Union do to prevent these and to support those who are exploited? So we need to look at this as a crime. Human trafficking and modern slavery are not inevitable. They take third-party intervention. And that can be an individual, an organised crime group, a business, white-collar criminals. It can even be a country. People are traded in big business. And if I give you examples, for example, here in Africa, some of the minerals that are required to power our phones or our computers, they are at a premium. And when one of the biggest buyers of those services was identified as having trafficking and child labour in its supply chains, particularly in the DRC, that year its shares increased because they produced a new mobile phone. So the moral compass is facing the wrong way. But we have many things that we can use. The UN Palermo Protocol to stop trafficking, the African Union 2020 to 2030 plan to end human trafficking and forced labour, especially of children, the European Union directives, the Council of Europe conventions, the ASEAN plan to stop trafficking, the action against trafficking across Latin America, the USA Trafficking in Persons Act 2000 and withhold release orders it has. And of course the 1930 Forced Labour Convention, which said in 1930 forced labour should be finished and removed from the planet in the shortest possible time. I don't think the authors of that thought that we would be here 95 years later at a time when it's at its greatest. So we have to accept, we as the incumbents of this planet, our moral compass is facing the wrong way. We need to change that. And we, as people of faith, we as people of the G20, we as citizens of the world, have that duty. Pope Francis made that very clear to us. Globally, only 0.5% of all victims get identified, and less than 0.02% of criminals are brought to justice. making this a crime of choice, a crime of great money. So what can we do? Well, the African Union can encourage, and this year in South Africa, the G20 to do what it must to challenge the money that's generated from this crime. Let's trace this 236 billion and put it back to good causes. Let's put it back to the workers. Let's make sure that remittances go to families. That will need inclusion of banks, the financial industry, and big business. We need IT companies to be held to account who are trading with scam centers, online trafficking. You can go online and demand and order a child in the Philippines and conduct sexual acts when you're sat in your house in Paris, London, Dublin, or New York. Cardinal Tagley has focused on this issue for many years, and we need to start responding to that at a systemic level. We need to demand that sexual exploitation and the buyers of that suffer and are brought to justice. We don't need to pursue the women and sometimes the men and boys and girls who are exploited in those industries. They are victims, and we need to actually target the buyers. Some countries, Nordic countries, Northern Ireland, Ireland, France, and others have introduced legislation around that. Business supply chains, we need to make sure are held accountable. The EU directives, the Australian laws, the UK laws, and new legislation in France, Canada, and some legislation in the US does do that to some part. But let's start getting the money that these companies are profiteering from out of trafficking and start using that to actually make things right for the victims, to make this something that you don't do by us taking away the profit. We need to use all means available, including international measures. For example, the international courts. We need to see how effective they have been on other things, particularly here in Africa. But one of the things we do need to do, particularly as faith groups and through the IF20, is about the leadership, the moral leadership that we need to echo and demand of other leaders. And we should never give up on that. So the IF20 is now establishing a working group, and we are working to establish an index for the G20, which will show how much funding is given by G20 countries to challenge this phenomenon. At the moment, it is less than $1 billion a year. The United States alone invests over $100 billion in the fight against drugs. So the whole world is fighting a crime with less than 1 billion, whereby the crime generates at least $236 billion a year. So that should be a call on the G20. Invest more, both politically and with resources, and integrate it into the daily norms of your society, into the political, economic, and the society of civil society. Why is this important? Well, in the UK, I met a Nigerian girl who was trafficked from Nigeria to the UK. She was 15. She was then moved on to be exploited in France. I met Eritrean girls who were sold for terrorism, who were in Italy. And I met Nigerian boys who were promised a life in Premier League football teams in Europe, only to end up in sexual exploitation in Italy. So we have the duty to support those people. We have the duty to prevent human trafficking, and we can make that happen. It's one of the Sustainable Development Goals. If anybody is being trafficked, we are leaving people behind. In fact, we are forgetting them as they are dying. 22,000 children every year. This needs to be a priority for the African Union. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kevin, for that contribution and for the input, because many of us have learned more on the human trafficking issues, especially in our own continent. I don't need to talk more because most of the things you mentioned about women's leadership has been mentioned before, but the issue of forced labor and human trafficking is an aspect. It's a very important topic, something that has to be taken to the G20 as we join them officially. So those of us who are in the organizing committee, please take note of this. Thank you very much for your contribution and for what you have made us understand today. I will now open the floor for questions. We'll be able to take a few questions. But before that question and answer session, I would want to just I might be wrong, but I will want to say that if we look in our folders, there's this sheet on the G20 interface priority areas of focus. And I've noticed that the women's issue is not really taken as a priority for interfaith, for this group. Last year I was here and we talked a lot about the women's issue and how something has to be done. And we were also told that if we join the G20, the women's issue will be one of the burning issues to be discussed, the women's issue in Africa. But looking at this, we have food security and poverty, economic and financial action, addressing interreligious tension, and then migration and refugee movement and disaster prevention. I guess, as usual, maybe like I said, I might be wrong, but the women's issue has also just been subsumed in all these issues. I think we should begin to take the women's issue very seriously. Thank you very much. This is just my own opinion. That's the way I have seen it here. The floor is now open for questions and answers. If you have questions, just raise your hands and we shall take 3. We have 10 minutes for this, or maybe less. Thank you. There's a hand up there. Who has
Hi,
the microphone?
hello. My name is Shimona. I'm from the Baha'i International Community Office in Addis Ababa. And thanks to the panelists for their contributions. I was just thinking when we're speaking about women's leadership, maybe we also speak about it not in the absence of men, but rather in the collaboration with them, so that it's seen as a collective endeavor. Otherwise, we also run the risk of seeing women and youth as the other and not part of one process. And I'm thinking also practically, how is this channeled? And it's also in the decision-making processes and mechanisms that exist at the continental level, but also at the local level. So I guess it's partly a question, but how can these decision-making mechanisms and processes be strengthened so that women and men can participate together in decision-making processes that address key issues such as human trafficking and connect the local needs to the continental agenda, so that there is a free flow of information, so that those at the decision-making table is not just one representative of one group, but representative of the collective. So I just wanted to share these thoughts about women's leadership that maybe goes beyond just the role of women in a very narrow perspective. Thank you.
There's a hand in front here.
Thank you. This is Mekdem Gerramo from the Catholic Bishops' Conference of Ethiopia, General Secretariat. And my question is, as one of our presenters said that billions are being spent or millions are being spent, and also from where I've come from, also billions are being spent in the area of empowering women in a multidimensional level, like education, providing economic opportunities and the likes. So why there is so much disempowerment in the area of women? Why not more women are being brought to leadership positions in politics, in international communities, and the likes? And the other thing is, as we are welcoming the African Union as a G20 member, what do you think Africa can learn from the G20 in the area of women empowerment, and also vice versa? What can G20 can learn from Africa? Thank you.
Is there somebody in front?
Sorry, please, the last speaker, can you just repeat the first part of the question, because we didn't seem to get it up here.
I'm afraid the microphone has moved. So let me just make one comment, picking up on our chair's comment at the beginning. It would be interesting to you to know that the priorities that you're looking at were drafted primarily by a woman. And her comment was that that the women's needs go into every one of these categories. So you may be correct that we need to make a way of making that more visible. We tried to do that in this conference by having this session, which would be a priority on women's issues. But we certainly agree with the comment and the suggestion that we need to make sure that women are brought to the forefront, and as one of the other questioners said, that it's a collaboration and not merely another group, an other group. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that clarification, but I personally would want to see that the women's issue is like a priority for presentation at the G20. Thank you all the same. Now, can we respond?
Yes.
I have said that the second person, I think the man from the Bishops' Conference, please, we didn't get the first part. You had two questions, and none of us seem to.
Okay. I have the mic. Now that probably I have the mic, pardon me, I'll say just to our brothers that are on the panel. My name is James Moveluye. I work with an imam, Ashafa. I'm looking at I want to ask, what arrangement do we have or strategy have we put in place as G20 to address the prevention of weaponization of women as instrument of war? Men weaponize women during conflicts and use them as instrument of getting at each other. Can there be a collaboration between G20 and the military chaplaincy within Africa to retrain them to know how to address soldiers when they go to war, to preserve the sacredness of the woman in all wars, looking at our religious injunctions and instructions on the life and sanctity of a woman? This is the question I want to throw. If there are leaders who have worked with the military in order to do a prevention of molestation and weaponization of women as instrument of war. Thank you.
Okay, maybe we'll just let us answer these questions for lack of time. The ones we have, please, any one of us here on the table can answer the questions. There are three. How can women and men be representatives at the time as collective on the table, decision-making table? Is anybody? You go ahead, Kevin.
Yes, going to the just a question. I'll just go through all three very quickly. But the decisions together, I think there are a number of fora that do that. And certainly the IF20 working group is going to be a collaboration, and including for the work of human trafficking survivors themselves. Mission states of women at the UN every year, the second largest UN event, has called on the fact that it needs more men participating. So I think there are fora to do that, but there needs to be more. I think the question of empowerment that the second asked about, why is there not more when there's so much investment? There is not more because there's still cultural issues about the status of women, and the legislation still hasn't come right. If you think about things even in Europe where there are laws on equal pay, in most sectors women still do not get the same equal pay, particularly when they reach senior positions. So there is a lot more to do on it. And the fact that there is money going into it and they're making lots of efforts, they are not producing what needs to be done. And that really needs political investment at a real level that's really solid and driving things, and accountability for that as well. Just on the weaponisation of women, particularly in conflict, the Organisation for Security and Coordination in Europe have done research on this, and they've also done it on the abuse of women in politics as well. So I think there is some research that's been done, but I do agree that it needs to be something that's spoken at the G20 level, particularly as we're seeing more about work in conflict. And I do know things that some military forces, particularly in the UN peacekeeping, for example, I know the British forces, having been with myself, they are doing and have spent a lot of resource and trying to, and successfully, bringing more women into senior leadership at officer level and general level, because when you have women in those roles, particularly when it's in theatre, you seem to get a better response and a more balanced approach to women's rights.
Thank you very much. I don't know if anyone you have something to add to that.
Thank you. Just to say that, answer the question about more women are being empowered. I would like to say that I agree with him that we still need even more women being empowered. If you look at the table there is no indigenous woman, and how is their empowerment being carried out? I think that is another thing that should preoccupy us, that next time in such a conference like this, we should also have the indigenous women present, and they can tell better than you. Thank you.
I don't know how I would get myself in trouble. I wonder if part of the question is, are we really measuring the right things? In the book that I was referring to, Dr. Hudson assumed that she knew what empowering women, or how to measure empowered women when she started. She was a professor. She said that she was looking at the number of women in legislative positions in Parliament, the number of women in the job board and in leadership positions there, and what she found was actually kind of eye-opening for me. She said that her university was hosting some women from Afghanistan. They were women parliamentarians. And she sat down at lunch with one of these women who was a pediatrician, and she was a parliamentarian who had been very, very well educated. And she started to celebrate with this woman. She said, "Isn't it great how empowered women in Afghanistan are?" And the woman went, "Oh, yeah, right." And it took Valerie back, and she thought, "Oh, I just said something wrong." She said, "Did you know that my husband can say 3 times, 'I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you,' and she's divorced. That she has no access to her children. It of her to live because there's disgrace there. And she said, how are you judging my empowerment? Yes, I'm educated. Yes, I have this degree, but I can't own my own property. I can't have my own children. And I live in fear of angering my husband because he just has to say, I divorce you 3 times. So I'm not an expert, but that was really eye-opening to me when I read that.
Thank you very much for that example, which is very good. I know if we have more time, there'll be people who want to react to that. But finally, I would want to know the last question or the last intervention talked about what happens to women during war. Please, if we have chaplains here, I think that will be an assignment that you have to take away with you. The religious leaders here who will have to talk to the congregation and let them know their duties and what should be done to at least protect women during wars, which is very, very important because at the end of the day, women and children suffer the most. But now we have to end. And I want to thank all of you very sincerely for your attention, for being here with us. I don't know if any one of us have just one word as takeaway for us to close. Just one. And I start with Mr. Highland.
Just one word, determination.
Compassionate and holistic care. Thank you.
Collaboration.
I would say collaboration as well.
I would also say collaboration and networking. The only way we can collaborate is to network. And if we don't network, then our time here is actually in vain. Thank you very much for your active participation while we continue to be active in the other sessions that we have today. Thank you. And thank you, my panelists here.